Well, with that, we'll go ahead and do a highlight video here. We'll talk about some games for Week 9 across the NFL with some picks and predictions. And I'm host Adam Burke. I'm joined, of course, by Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. And Brian, you already did a video for this Seahawks and Bills game. Seahawks minus 2.5, total 54 on this one. But just to start us off here with this highlight video, sounds like you've got some thoughts on that one.
Track meet. Absolute track meet. The crazy thing is the Bills, it was frustrating because they tried to give away the Patriots game and they made a play at the end of the game to hang on and win. This is a letdown spot to the moon for the Bills. And you get an out-of-conference team coming in here. The Buffalo basically, once they saw the weather forecast for this past week, on Friday they said they practiced 2 plays. The rest of it was running plays. And they just ran the ball down New England's throat. The offensive coordinator, DeBoll, I've been screaming to the heavens for 8 weeks. Stop with the Allen in the shotgun and Singletary and Moss standing next to him. Give him the ball, and he gets the ball standing still. And they had no running game. I'm like, line the running back behind. They're good running backs. Let them run downhill, spot a hole with a little momentum. Well, they rushed for nearly 200 yards. They ran it down New England's throat. So I think they figured out that they've got a running game if they decide to use it properly, and then Allen can be dangerous with the play action. And you've got Diggs. Beasley's really had the hot hand of late. They got to get John Brown in the offense. Seattle, the running back situation is sketchy, but Wilson runs around. He's incredible. Throws as good a deep ball, the best deep ball, I believe, in the NFL. He's been remarkable. They are going to get their fair share of points. The Bills have had injuries with Milano and Edmonds. And I just think that goes up and down the field. And the real big reason, Adam, I'm thinking of you Sunday when I'm watching right before halftime of the Browns-Raiders game. The weather, it was like the scene in Caddyshack with the Bishop and Bill Murray. And Bill Murray said, I don't think the heavy stuff's coming for quite a while. It was ridiculous. And that is basically right up the lake. The difference is probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours that weather hits Buffalo. So Buffalo had wind and rain last Sunday. It was never as bad as it was in the Cleveland Raiders game. The advanced forecast for this next weekend, it's going to be in the 40s, I believe, out here. You get your suntan lotion, pal. This weekend at Cleveland, Buffalo, supposed to be 68 and sunny. It's probably going to be, and that means that the ticking time bombs behind it and winters are coming, but it's going to be 68 and sunny. These two teams are going up and down the field.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get out on the golf course one more time here this week because it's supposed to be sunny in 60s, really across the Great Lakes region. Hopefully I can get out one more time after things dry out a little bit here, but yeah, the weather should not be an issue. I know people kind of talk about that 10 a.m. start time for Seattle. I don't know if that's an issue for a team as well coached and as well led by Russell Wilson as they are. So, and the thing too is that, Buffalo, while they got the running game going last week, it's been an issue all season long. The Seahawks are okay against the run, and we saw that last week against San Francisco. It's the pass that they struggle with.
Well, and I think they got to get Allen going again. And I don't know, I know I've mentioned it. I don't know necessarily it was with you last week. And you know me, I follow the Bills religiously, and I missed this. And it was prior to the Jets game last week, Trent Dilfer on the pregame show. If you remember, Allen got knocked out of the Raiders game where he fell awkwardly on his left shoulder, went in the locker room right before halftime, came back out, and they won the game. And he just said, it was sore and everything. At least it wasn't my throwing shoulder. He's been wearing a brace on his left shoulder. And Dilfer said he's convinced it popped out. They popped it back in. And he's convinced that he separated his shoulder in that Raiders game. And he said it's about a 3 to 5 week injury for it to really shore up and heal. But he's been wearing a brace on his left shoulder, and he thinks it's impacted his mechanics. And everybody's ready to go back to this he's inaccurate thing all over again. I think he's playing hurt.
Well, and again, as I said, Brian's already done a video for us on our ATS YouTube page with a look at the Seahawks and the Bills game. Also, he has thoughts over there on the Dolphins and Cardinals game, so we encourage you to check those out while you're right here on our ATS YouTube page. Brian, I want to ask you about this game here, 455, 456, Chicago and Tennessee. Titans a 5.5-point favorite here in this game. Total 46.5. And I don't think there was a more disappointing team in the NFL this past week than the Titans. The line went up. It was the most popular play in the Circa Sports Million and the Westgate Super Contest. I had them in the Circa. They faced a Bengals offensive line with 4 new starters, and they don't even sack Joe Burrow at all. They look inept offensively for large stretches of that game. Now they take on a better defense in the Chicago Bears. What do you think about the Titans laying 5.5 this week?
I'd lean to the total likely, Adam. I mean, the one thing with Tennessee, they're pretty good about circling the wagons kind of thing. Coming off the COVID thing where everybody was giving them grief, and they beat the Bills. They played the Steelers really tough. They had a gauntlet. I mean, I'm willing to draw a line through that for Tennessee. But their problem is their third down conversion rate on defense. It's like far too often they can't get off the field. That's the big thing. Now, this isn't a Bears offense that scares you. So I would expect better things from Tennessee's defense. And honestly, you talk about disappointing. Chicago's got to be sick to their stomach. They gave that game away against New Orleans. At halftime, they were killing New Orleans. I mean, killing them. And they punted it to Breeze with about a minute to go in the half at about his own 30. And out of nowhere, they let's go to this ridiculous prevent zone and gave him like 4 chunk plays in a row with underneath stuff. And even the announcers were like, well, that's too easy. Again, they're giving him the field goal. Well, they didn't give him a field goal. They gave him a touchdown. Breeze threw a touchdown to Cook right before halftime. And the whole game turned on a dime. I mean, I watch all these teams do this stuff. I mean, the prevent thing drives me nuts. The timeouts drives me nuts. But that prevent thing at halftime cost them the game. It changed the whole game, and Chicago still had their chance to win in overtime.
No, I agree. And that's the thing is, you've got to pay close attention in the NFL because perception does mean so much. And that is a big question here, with Tennessee is, did they just run out of gas in that game against the Bengals? Was it just a spot where maybe it was overconfidence or maybe they just walked in there thinking it was going to be easy and it wound up not being easy? And quite frankly, the Bengals have been competitive this year. They've covered a lot of spreads over the course of the season.
Tampa Bay and the Giants. I mean, Tampa Bay's got New Orleans coming up next week. I mean, you can't get up every week. You can't, I don't care who you are. They're not college kids. It's more prevalent in college. But, they're still professional football teams. If you don't show up, you're going to have to work for it. I mean, honestly, the Giants should have won that game last night. How many wide open stretch plays did Jones have? He had so many opportunities. And then on top of it, missed his chances and then made egregious mistakes that led to the game-winning points. And they still had a chance to win. So, it's like I'm saying, like, I want the Bills to win, but I know that's just a horrible letdown spot. You have to take that into account. I think Tennessee just had a letdown spot against Cincinnati. I like the under in the game, Bud, personally.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of people are probably going to look at this and say, man, Tennessee at 5.5 is a big number. Keep in mind, it opened 6. And, again, there's really not a whole lot of home field advantage in the NFL this year. So, a lot of people are probably going to look at that line and say, how could I lay this with Tennessee coming off of that loss to Cincinnati? There are some games that you just need to put in a separate column or put in a box and put the lid on it and just sort of kind of draw a line through it, as you said. So I'm curious to see what happens with that line, and maybe more importantly, curious to see what happens with that game. And if Tennessee does play up to that expectation and does have that bounce back performance, because you may miss the boat here, but maybe you'll find a spot similar to this down the line where it can be something you can use that's actionable info for you.
And the one thing I would say, and you're right, it's probably a perception thing, and you look at the record or you go to the standings. But for the most part, save 1 week, Cincinnati's been in every game. I mean, Cincinnati is not a pushover. And Burrow's done some cool things. He's still a rookie, and he's going to make mistakes. But this is a team they're competing. I mean, I don't think it's this horrific loss everybody's making out to be.
No, I don't think so either. Another game I want to ask you about here, 463, 464, Houston and Jacksonville. Not the sexiest game on the board by any means, but you got a 1-6 Houston team laying 6.5 on the road, total 51.5 for this one. Jacksonville will not have Gardner Minshew, and we kind of knew that, I guess, because this line really hasn't moved a whole lot, but for the life of me, I cannot remember a one-win team this deep in the season effectively laying a touchdown on the road.
Well, they're both coming off a bye. That's all I got. No, they're both coming out. You know what I would watch for? It will not shock me. After we tape this video and you send it out, what if 25 minutes after you send it out, they trade Will Fuller? I mean, the trade deadline, I think, is a thing here for Houston. In Jacksonville, it's just one of these teams. Best of luck to you trying to get a read on these guys. I mean, it could be the ugliest game in the world, or it could be a track meet. I would lean when you get two teams that are hopelessly out of it, and it's crazy to say that, you know, going into week 9 when you think of what's going on in the NFC East. But basically, where Houston and Jacksonville reside, I mean, when you're hopelessly out of it, it's that intensity level goes down, and you do crazier things and some gimmick plays. And I would lean to the over. You know, I mean, it's not like, oh man, hey, all these great players are there. I just think the nature of the game, the lack of intensity, generally, I mean, it could be they're just, you know, ugly and it's a punt fest, but I'm more inclined to think it'll be a turn the clock back to the old AFL days where they're both thrown for 400 yards.
Yeah, you know, that's an excellent point to make here, is that, you know, we do have some teams that are already clearly out of it. Some teams that, you know, you can kind of question their motivation week in and week out. But we've talked about this a lot, specifically with the NHL, where the more important the game, the more things tighten up. And as you said, this game's not really important. I mean, it's important for Jacksonville because they're better off losing as many games as possible to improve their draft position. Probably the same thing for Houston too, but at least Houston with Romeo Crennel, they've looked far more engaged. So Houston will probably be a very popular teaser team this week. I may kind of like them a little bit minus the 6.5 if they keep Will Fuller, as you said. But, you know, that's the big thing is, you know, like you said, I don't think either one of these teams really has a whole lot of intensity to give throughout the year. And you may want to start looking at overs for those teams that just don't really have a whole lot going for them.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good point. I think that's a kind of a generic way to look at it. And then, you know, the other thing, to try to take some of the guessing game out of it, when you get games like this with teams you just can't trust, you know, God gave you two eyes. You know, when you watch these games, it doesn't mean the game's dead to you. But if you go and watch and go, oh, they're engaged today. I mean, you can tell when you're watching the game. Oh, their defense is fired up. Or, oh, though Minshew looks like, you know, he's not a train wreck today. Or you know, Deshaun Watson's taking the game over. And on the way in, can you trust either of these teams? The answer is no. But if you watch the first half or the first quarter, you'll get a real sense of who's into it. And maybe the games like this with teams you can't trust, in-game wagering is the way to go.
And also an unknown factor here with Jacksonville, with Jake Luton getting the start, with Gardner Minshew hurt. So we don't really know what Jacksonville's offense will look like, if it will be any different. So maybe live betting, a good opportunity for sure in that one. What about this Sunday night game? You mentioned it already. Tampa Bay maybe looking ahead last night to this rematch with New Orleans. Buccaneers are a 5.5-point favorite at home. When these two teams played back in week 1, the Saints were a 4-point favorite at home. So as I said, there's not a whole lot of home field advantage to go around this year. Drew Brees in the dome or in warmer weather does help him. So maybe that factors into this line a little bit. But Brian, we're talking about a difference of 9.5 points really from where these two teams were in week 1. Is that an overreaction, or do you think that's a pretty fair indication given the body of work for both teams?
No, I think it's reasonable. And honestly, if the Bucs had looked a lot better on Monday night, the number maybe even a touch higher. New Orleans, it's funny. I don't think they get enough credit. We're always poking the bear. They don't look right. Something's not right with New Orleans. Think what they did with the one year Breeze got hurt. And everybody's, oh, man, well, if Teddy Bridgewater can hold down the fort, they'll have a chance at the end. And then Bridgewater came in and they did great. The Taysom Hill thing, he does some good things. Sometimes Peyton gets a little squirrely with his decision-making. But New Orleans just wins, and they should get credit for that. I mean, I didn't think they should have won the game against the Bears, but they won. Think about this. Michael Thomas has been out the majority of the season. This past week, Emmanuel Sanders, who had finally become part of the offense, he gets COVID. And they find a way to win. I mean, you get the ball to Kamara, and he can do a lot of good things, and Traquan Smith and whoever they plug in. Cook, the tight end, showed up. So I think they deserve a world of credit. But with Tampa, I don't know what the deal was Antonio Brown, what that's going to look like, and how quick that comes to fruition. But the Giants gave Brady a lot of trouble with good pressure. I mean, if you can get Brady, now they got all the weapons, we know that. The funny thing is, but we have this one, and we've got the Giants in Washington. The other thing you got to take into account. These are the first two games where revenge is in play. The first rematch games of the year here come in week 9. And honestly, that first week, I loved New Orleans. It had nothing to do with nothing other than, and I was right then, is that Brady, I don't care who you are, how great you are, learning a new coach, learning new wide receivers, and then you had the funky preseason and training camp. That New Orleans is like, I'm sick of hearing about Tom Brady, and they won the game handily. Now, 9 weeks later, I think this Tampa Bay team is going to get better and better and better every week. And look at the emergence of Gronkowski now again in that offense.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of interesting talking points here. I do think there were a couple of revenge games. Packers Vikings, I think, was one of them, and then
okay, yeah, that's right.
And Browns and Bengals. But yeah, we are at that point now where we are getting those division revenge games. So that is an angle that you may want to consider here. And in the first game, Tampa Bay was probably the better team. I mean, Drew Brees was under 100 passing yards, I think, deep into the third quarter. I remember I was on the Saints in that game. I did take them in the circa, and I got very lucky, I think, on actually have them cover the number there in that matchup in week 1. But I think the biggest question that we have to answer regarding this week 9 game here, and quite frankly, I don't know what the answer to this question is. A lot of people have looked at the Saints defense this year and have said they're better than they've played. They're better than what that statistical profile looks like. They're terrible on third down. That's been a big issue for them. So they've gotten a little bit worn down. They haven't gotten off the field, stuff like that. But a lot of people I've heard have repeatedly said this Saints defense is better than what we've seen so far. If you believe that to be the case, and you're getting 5.5 here, I think you like New Orleans. If you don't believe this Saints defense is better, I think you like Tampa Bay.
I don't want this to come out the wrong way. Like, we don't have to agree on everything. You don't want it to be a love fest. And I'm not taking a shot here. But it's funny. You said that. Earlier, I said Tennessee can't get off the field on third down. And, well, what did we say all summer long? Are these defenses, they can't get off the field on third down, or the defense isn't as good? What did we say all summer long? When these teams go on the road, they're not dealing with crowd noise. That the offenses are going to move the chains. On third down, the train whistle may go on the Jumbotron, but the fans aren't standing up going bananas. You're telling me New Orleans can't get off the field on third down? I said Tennessee. I would venture a guess the majority of the teams in the NFL, what they're doing on third down, allowing on third down, across the league, that number is higher. The advantages to the offenses, specifically the visiting teams, who are not dealing with crowd noise. So I wouldn't just say the defense is giving up so much on third down. I think third down efficiency around the league for visiting teams is through the roof.
That's fair. And I also think, too, with the way that play calling has changed, we're probably in fewer third and long situations this year. Teams throwing a little bit more on early downs, stuff like that. So more manageable third downs, too. 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, stuff like that. as opposed to, run into the line twice, then get 3rd and 8, and everybody in the building knows you're passing.
And how many more teams are going for like the 4th and 2? I'm seeing more of this, at the 40 coming in or something, to the point where maybe they're more aggressive. Like if it's 3rd and 6 and the coach has already made his mind up, we're going for it. So that 3rd down play, that play call is, we're going to call a play here on the premise that we're going to go for it again. So they may run on a 3rd and 5 where they normally wouldn't because they're considering it 4-down territory. And some of these things add up to moving the chains.
No, that's very true. That's a very true point there. So what are you thinking about that Sunday night game? Like I said, Bucks minus 5.5, 51.5. Any early thought on that one from you?
Doesn't do much for the old podcast, does it? No, I don't like any. I don't know.
That's fair. I think it's a tough handicap, and also too, I want to see if Michael Thomas is going to play. I think that's important here too.
Well, no, that's just it. I would lean to Tampa Bay, but I'm not loving. I mean, look what Tampa Bay did at home to Aaron Rodgers. If you want to throw the revenge in there and the importance of the game and seizing control of the division and Brady, and I would lean to Tampa Bay. I mean, but you're getting Breeze in 4.5 points. But I'd have a slight lean to Tampa. It's not a game. It's Sunday night. I'll find something to play, inside the game. Probably a prop. If Thomas doesn't go and Sanders comes back from the COVID, I'd probably play Emmanuel Sanders over. It'd probably be something in the 59.5, 63-yard range. Maybe I'd pick a guy like Sanders out of the equation there, because he's been out of sight, out of mind. And he had just figured out how to get in the offense. I think he had over 100 yards the week before he was out.
Yeah, I don't remember if Sanders is out again this week or not. I'm sure it'll come down to what his testing looks like.
I guess it was a 2-week. He was on IR, whatever the COVID IR thing is. He's eligible to return this week.
I think, and you talk about this a lot, I think this is kind of correlated. If you think the Saints defense is better and you like the under, I think it's the Saints. If you think this is a game where a lot of points are scored, I think it's Tampa Bay, because I don't think at this point in time Drew Brees is well equipped to go into a shootout with anybody.
He doesn't touch the field anymore.
Right. So I think, and obviously if Thomas is back, it helps. But it's the same thing that you always kind of talk about. There's a court, when you think of the game state, when you think of the game flow and how you expect this one to play out, if both teams are getting to the 30s or you think both teams can get to the 30s, I don't know if Breeze can get there. If you think it's a lower scoring game, maybe the Saints are the side then.
Honestly, this is when like a game like this, what I can see happening is, and why I'd stay away, Tampa Bay could be the better team for the lion's share of the game. And, Tampa Bay's in complete control of the game. They're up 10. And then they go into the idiot prevent, and Breeze goes down the field and throws a touchdown with 26 seconds left, and they're down 3. But it'd be the back. Tampa Bay dominated the whole game, but Breeze gets you the backdoor cover. That honestly, generally speaking, that's why I play total 70% of the time. I really do. The backdoor cover, unless you think someone's going to roll somebody, that garbage is always in play because these coaches can't help themselves with this stupid damn prevent defense.
No, I completely agree with you. A lot of good thoughts here on this NFL breakdown on our ATS YouTube page. Like I said, you can get additional thoughts on Seahawks, Bills, Dolphins, and Cardinals here on our ATS YouTube page as well. But I encourage you to check out our full editions of ATS Radio, which you can find on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Podbean, TuneIn, wherever you stream and download your podcast content.